Hello and good afternoon. I'm very happy to have you here in our today's discussion.
Assalamualaikum,
So,
sir.
Walaikum assalam wa barakatuh. So today we are going to talk about history of New England transcendentalism, or in another way you can say American transcendentalism. So far, actually, we have been studying the text Self-Reliance by Ralph Waldo Emerson, and Ralph Waldo Emerson, through his text Nature and also through his text Self-Reliance, he established this idea of transcendentalism in the history of American literature or philosophy. And this is very interesting that, this American transcendentalism in the philosophy, that was the first contribution in the Western philosophy by any American. Before that, as a nation, this new nation actually, they
আপনার ওই স্লাইডটা শো করতেছে না যেটা আপনি বলতেছেন
just the first slide you can see, right?
জাস্ট আপনার নাম ডিপার্টমেন্ট ওই স্লাইডটা শো করতেছে
Okay, I'm just giving you the introduction. I'll go back to jump to the next slide later. Okay. So this American transcendentalism, that was a major contribution to the philosophy, or we can say the any literary movement by any American. And Ralph Waldo Emerson, actually, he first introduced it through his writing, Nature and the Self-Reliance. Now here you can see in the second slide, it says that transcendentalism was an American literary, philosophical, and political movement in New England in the early 19th century. Now, please don't get confused with the word New England, because the word New England means it's a place in USA from where actually all these people they came from. And it was very close to Boston. And Ralph Waldo Emerson, he was also from New England, and also Thoreau and like Nathaniel Hawthorne. So all these famous writers and philosophers in American literature, most of them actually at that time, they are from this place, New England. And it was in 19th century that this idea of transcendentalism actually, it gained pace at that time. Now, transcendentalism was the belief in spiritual and transcendental truths beyond sense perception and material existence, according to material existence. And according to Octavius Brooks Fordingham, in his book Transcendentalism in New England, that is the title of the book, Transcendentalism in New England. In that book, Fordingham, he says, transcendentalism was a distinct philosophical system. Practically, it was an assertion of the immanence of divinity and instinct, the transference of supernatural attributes to the natural constitution of mankind. So it was taken from his book, page 136. He also says that the movement emphasized independence, self-reliance, and the connection to nature. Common themes in transcendentalism were self-wisdom, nature, and social reform. Now let's explain this one by one. So you see, the transcendentalism was the belief in spiritual and transcendental truths beyond sense perception and material existence. So the word transcend means to exceed something. I mean, you jump from one state of yours to another state. That means jumping from one state to another state, and that is completely spiritual. So from one spiritual state, you are jumping to another spiritual state. And how actually you transcend? It says the transcendental truths beyond sense perception and material existence. Your sense perception means your eyes, your nose, your tongue, your ears, and also your skin. So using all these sense perception, all kinds of sense perceptions, you will go beyond these. That means you will not sense anything physically. It's nothing physical. It's completely spiritual. So you'll go beyond your physical sense, all your sense perception, and also your material existence as a man. So you are a man, and you have some sense, and you have obviously have sense perception, and you will exceed the sense perception. You will transcend it and you will go to another level of spirituality. So that is called transcendentalism. And how actually we can achieve it? So you see, transcendentalism was a distinct philosophical system. Practically, it was an assertion of the immanence of divinity in instinct. How do you do it? You do it by using your instinct. Instinct, that is something very primordial. That is in everybody. We have our own instinct as a human being. Actually, it depends on your intuition, not on your imagination exactly. It's more than that. And it is a kind of divinity. That's why it says that an immanence of divinity. It's a kind of ushering of divinity. In divinity. So you will have your own divinity, or your own divine quality, which is more or less a kind of godly-like existence in your present time. You'll have it, but you have to use your intuition, and if you have to use your instinct, and you have to go beyond your sense perception and your material existence. Then you can have, or you can experience this transcendentalism in your life. Got it?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Sir,
Okay.
what's about material existence?
Okay, material existence means you can just understand. I hope you understand the word meditation. You have some idea of meditation. So while actually people are doing meditation, what do? They try to transcend their physicality, their physical existence, and they try to go to another level of their mind. So it's in your mind, you are going to another level, and you simply don't feel your body anymore. So that is transcendentalism. It's a kind of form of meditation. You must know that Ralph Waldo Emerson, actually, while he was traveling to different European countries, he came across to, he came across to different libraries in the different parts of the world. So he went to different libraries and he read different books. And by this way, he also got familiar with the scriptures and with the books and with the philosophies from the Eastern world. That means Eastern philosophy. And also, especially the Indian philosophy, he came to know about them. Also, he read about the Indian literature, that is literature from the subcontinent, and also philosophy from this part of the world. And you see, his idea of transcendentalism, it is based on that kind of thing. And also, you know that in my previous lecture, I have already mentioned that he also went to England, UK, and there he met Samuel Taylor Coleridge and also Wordsworth. So he was familiar with this romantic movement. And this romantic movement also actually gives emphasis on the imagination, human intuition. So he was influenced by all these philosophical movements, philosophical ideas from the East and the West, and then he amalgamated those philosophical ideas, and he formed it, or he gave it a shape, and that is quite American. That's why we are calling it American Transcendentalism, because it has its own shape, it has its own characteristics, which is very much American. Now I will go further. In the next slide, you can see Transcendentalism emerged from English and German Romanticism and philosophy and took place during the American Renaissance. It was a reaction against the general state of intellectualism and spirituality at the time, particularly Unitarianism, which was the dominant religious movement in New England in the early 19th century. So I have already mentioned it, that Ralph Waldo Emerson, he himself actually, he was from this Unitarian background. So he himself was a Unitarian earlier. And you can see that at that time in New England in the 19th century, and most of the people, they were the followers of this Unitarian. So they went to Unitarian church and they were following this Unitarian Christian, you can say the Christian trend, I should say. So it was a different movement, and they believed in the only one God. They didn't believe in the Trinity. That means the God, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. They didn't believe in this Trinity. Rather, they believed in the one God. So these are the people actually who are linked to Unitarianism. And Ralph Waldo Emerson also, he was a part of it. But later on, in his later life, actually, he didn't believe in this Unitarianism or Unitarian belief in anymore, this organized religion. And then he started, developing this idea of transcendentalism. So when this idea of transcendentalism actually it evolved, or it was developed as a trend of philosophy at the time in USA, especially in New England, there at that time Unitarianism was very much influential as a religious practice, religious movement. So you see, at the same time Transcendentalism, and at the same time there was Unitarianism in that in New England. And transcendentalists felt that Unitarianism placed too much emphasis on rationality and reason as a means of achieving spiritual enlightenment. So that was their complaint against Unitarianism. Because they're saying that Unitarianism, they use logic and they are very much rational. So they use logic and rationality for achieving spiritual enlightenment. So if you really want to gain spirituality, then you must be very much rational and reasonable. And Unitarianism, according to the scriptures, their religious scriptures, actually they believe in that way. But Transcendentalists, they believe that through this rationality or using reason, you simply can't gain that kind of spirituality. It's not possible. So what could be the alternative? The alternative is you have to use your imagination, you have to use your intuition. And it is part of your instinct. Now, in the next slide, you can see why did Transcendentalism start? That means what are the reasons behind this? Why actually people become very much fond of this Transcendentalism? Now, see, Unitarianism preached that the Bible could be studied rationally, like any other text. Yes.
Sir, how meditation is related with transcendentalism?
Okay, so you're saying that how meditation is related to Transcendentalism?
Yes, sir. Meditation, how related? How is it related?
I mean, you see, I just gave you an analogy to understand it, because Transcendentalists also, they believe some kind of meditation. Because if you don't meditate, then you cannot reach to that level. For example, you are walking around and you are doing your everyday business, you're doing your household chores, you're doing your job. In that way, actually, you cannot gain spirituality. For spirituality, you need a kind of tranquility, peace of mind. And for that peace of mind, you need to have that kind of meditation, a meditative mood, so that you can reach to that transcendental stage. Understood what I'm saying?
Sir, actually it means to refresh the psychology.
It's
psychological balance or mental balance, actually.
Mental balance and psychological balance that are directly done by the meditation. But here it's more than that psychological or mental balance. It's about philosophical. It's about something spiritual, divinity. That means you will reach to the level of the God.
Okay, sir.
Through that kind of meditation. That means you yourself will have a kind of, you will become a part of the God. Understood? That is, God and you,
yes, sir.
We cannot differentiate between these two, when actually you will be in the transcendental level, if you can reach that level. So it's more than meditation. So Unitarianism thinks that the Bible could be studied rationally. So they say that we can study the Bible rationally, and even the other texts. But the transcendental belief that a person could achieve spiritual enlightenment by instinct, looking inward and relying on their own intuition. And according to Tiffany K. Wayne, in her book, The Encyclopedia of Transcendentalism, this writer, she said that in exploring the role of the individual in a theological sense, Transcendentalism ultimately rejected the need for biblical Christianity, replacing belief in the God of the Bible with belief in the divinity of humanity. So you see, this is the idea of the Transcendentalism. Now here actually you will find that why it is different from the regular meditation. So we shouldn't confuse it with the meditation. For understanding, we can take the help that how actually we can have this Transcendentalism, but it is not meditation, it's more than that. It's a kind of philosophy of life. It itself is a religion. Meditation is not a religion. It can be a part of the religious practice, but itself is not a religion. But Transcendentalism in itself is a kind of religion, you can say. I guess you understand it now. Do you follow me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That means they were against the rituals of religion.
Exactly. Obviously, they are against all the rituals and practices of the religion.
That means the whatever the way is, the main theme is an individual person wants to go closer to our Creator. So the way may be I mean, what should I say?
That means he
সেটা
doesn't.
মেডিটেশন হোক বা হচ্ছে নেচারের কাছাকাছি যে হোক, মানে যেখানেই যে হোক, মানে স্পিরিচুয়ালি সে গডের কাছাকাছি যেভাবে আসতে পারবে সেটাই সেটাই acceptable, এরকম কি?
Not only nature and meditation, actually it's about your intuition. You can go to the nature, and there you can have a meditation, and you can transcend your perception, you transcend your sense perception, and then also your physical existence, and then you can reach to the level of the God. Understood?
Okay, sir.
But the medium is intuition. It's yourself, it's your instinct. You have to use that. It has been explained here in this slide. Let's focus on it, and then it will be clear to you, I hope. Now, you see, Unitarian, they say that we can use logic and reason to explain the biblical text or any kind of text. But the Transcendentalists, they're saying that no, we have to use our intuition if you really want to express anything. And how? And instead, you have to look inward and relying on our own intuition. So you have to look inward. That means you have to look into yourself, in your mind, and then you have to rely on your intuition as the medium. Now here, the quote from the book, the Encyclopedia of Transcendentalism, it explains it better, and it's easy to understand. She says, quote unquote, in exploring the role of the individual in a theological sense, Transcendentalism ultimately rejected the need for biblical Christianity, replacing belief in the God of the Bible with a belief in the divinity of humanity. So you see, if you really want to explore it from the theological perspective, theological sense, then Transcendentalism, what does it do? It rejects the biblical Christianity. It says that no, we don't need any Bible, we don't need any scriptures, we don't need any mediator. In Bengali, we call it Madhyasthatakari. So we don't need any mediator. We can do it by ourselves, just only relying on our own intuition and looking inward. We can achieve that. And through that, what we can do, we can replacing belief in the God of the Bible. That means the God of the Bible, they don't believe it anymore. They believe in the God, but that is their own God. That is not the God as it is described in the Bible. So they have their own God, and their God is that kind of God where actually they can reach without having any kind of assistance or any kind of help from any kind of scriptures, any kind of book or text, just like Bible. And with the belief in the divinity of humanity, and they believe that human itself is divine. We are divine. That means human itself, divine means oishoric. So we are divine ourselves. So we have the divinity in ourselves. That means we are just like gods. And through transcendental, reaching to the transcendental level, we can have oneness. We can have a kind of oneness. Me and the God, we can become one. Is the explanation clear now?
Yes, স্যার এটা মানে আমরা গডের প্রতি বিলিভ করব, বাট কোনো ওয়েতে নিয়ে গডের প্রতি মানে রিলিজিয়ন কোনো বুক এর উপর বিলিভটা না, গডের প্রতি বিলিভ আমাদের নিজে থাকে, ওন ওয়ে টু বিলিভ।
Exactly. That is the art of the individualism. That means you don't depend on any text to say that, look, this is the God, and this is a Christian God. So please say to him, nice to meet you. So, and then you greet him, nice to meet you, Christian God. It's not like that. And there is no priest, there is no bishop to tell you that this is the God. We can know our own God by ourselves. We don't need any suggestion. I don't need your prescription. I don't need any of your suggestion. I can reach to the level of the God by myself. So I can have a communion. I can have a conversation. I can have a connection established between God and me by myself. So I don't need any arbitrator. I don't need any mediator. So that is the idea of the Transcendentalism. Have you got it now?
ওকে স্যার, বুঝতে পারছি। ইয়েস স্যার।
Okay. Now, according to Octavius Brooks Fording, his book New England Transcendentalism, New England was a perfect breeding ground for the Transcendentalist movement. That is why actually in New England, this idea of Transcendentalism, it became so popular. What was the reason? Why did it work there? So here is the explanation from his book, page 105. He says, but in New England, the ideas entertained by the foreign thinkers took root in the native soil and blossomed out in every form of social life. The philosophy assumed full proportions, produced fruit according to its kind, created a new social order for itself, or rather showed what sort of social order it would create under forcing conditions. Its new heavens and new earth were made visible, if but for a moment and in a winter season. Hence, when we speak of transcendentalism, we mean New England transcendentalism. New England furnished the only plot of ground on the planet where the transcendental philosophy had a chance to show what it was and what it proposed. Now, in the very first 2 lines, actually, he gave the reason. He says that, but in New England, the ideas entertained by the foreign thinkers took root in the native soil and blossomed out in every form of social life. So you see, New England, the situation was like this, that people were ready to embrace anything new because that was their mentality. Though they were actually Unitarian, most of them, but still the soil, that means the area or the people, they were ready to embrace the new thinkers and their ideas because they were very inquisitive. They were prone to learn something new. So that's why he's saying that they blossom out in every form of social life. And these new ideas that will be embraced by the people, and in their social life, they will implement those. They will experiment with those new ideas. So that was the mentality of the people in the New England at that time. And the philosophy assumed full proportions, produced fruit according to its kind, created a new social order for itself, or rather showed what sort of social order it would create under favoring conditions. That means if the New England, people in the New England, if they get the favorable conditions, the conditions that is favorable to them, then they are ready to embrace something new and which is very fruitful. And you can find the use of that kind of new ideas in the life of the people of the New England. So actually, they were ready to embrace the new ideas. So that's why this idea of transcendentalism, when actually it was there, it evolved as a philosophy of life, or we can say as a religion. People embraced it. Now, Fordingham goes on to explain the New England's high literacy rates, individualism, strong Protestant beliefs, individualism, strong Protestant beliefs, and revolutionary nature made it so that every New Englander was at heart, whether he suspected it or not, radical or instinctively a disciple of philosophers Fichte or Schelling, of Cousin or Geoffrey. Now, this is interesting. Just take a look at this, that how the life of the New English, these New English people or New England people was there. You see, these people, literacy rates were very high. That means in New England, most of the people, they were educated. Got it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you see, when people are literate not in that sense that only they can read and write, they were literate in the true sense of the term. So when people are literate, you will find them, most of the time, they're enlightened by themselves. Because since you have the knowledge, for example, you can see the people from the English department and even people from the philosophy or Bengali literature, or people from anthropology, you will find them that this kind of people from this kind of academic background, they're more liberal and they're more open to the new ideas and they're more tolerant than the other group of people in the society. Don't you believe so?
Yes, sir.
Because of our education, because we know how to accept new things and we know how to analyze new stuff. And also we are trained in this way. For example, why actually we are reading these, this transcendentalism or all these American philosophies, philosophers, American literatures, or literatures from different other Western countries. Thus, actually reading these things, we are preparing ourselves to embrace the new things and to accept anything new. So usually you will find that people from our background, we don't get shocked when we see something new because we are prepared for this, that society is evolving itself and it is having new experiences, and with the new experiences, we get new kinds of philosophy of life. So the same thing happened with the people from the New England. They were highly educated, and that's why they were very much influenced by this idea of individualism. So everybody was regarding themselves as individual because they were educated, they were enlightened. So they care about their individual development, their flourishment. and also strong Protestant beliefs. You see, the Protestant, this group of Christian people, then unlike the Catholic or the Orthodox Christian people, they're more liberal and they're more open. Because you see, in their name, in their domination, the denomination, we have this word Protestant. So what does it mean, Protestant? It is from, do you see the word, any particular word that catches your attention here, Protestant?
Sorry sir, question টা বুঝতে পারি নাই।
I'm asking you, just take a look at the word Protestant. So do you see any particular word familiar to you? From which word it can be there?
Yes, sir. It's familiar to us.
What word
We
actually you
know
can
the
see?
Christian
No.
Revolutionary
Christian religion.
thinker.
Exactly. That is okay. But just take the word Protestant. What do you find in the word Protestant? Is there any English?
Revolution.
No. Exactly English word. Which word is there? Protest. Exactly.
Protest to Protestant.
Exactly. So you see, the word Protestant is.
Sir.
I mean, yes. Yes. Do you want to say something? Is there? Okay. Now you see, in the name Protestant, it's. I mean, this Protestant beliefs. So they always, you see, they always like to demonstrate a kind of protest. That means they are not easy people. I mean, you cannot convince them that much easily. So they will not go by any fixed rules and regulations. So all the time, actually, they will explore something new and which will suit them. They will follow that rule. So individualism also complement to these Protestant beliefs, and also education also complemented to their growth. I mean, in this kind of individualism or individualistic, I mean, perspective of their life. And that's why also it says that revolutionary nature. So people from the New England, by nature, they were revolutionary. That means they don't want to create any chaos, but they wanted to revolutionize the existing norms, the existing philosophy, existing, I mean, theology. So they wanted to create something new all the time. So when these transcendentalists, I mean, they preached their idea, this transcendentalism, they found it very lucrative, they found it very alluring, very enlightening. So that's why these educated people, these individualistic people, they embraced it. So, I mean, Fording Amin's book, he mentioned it there. Now, in the next slide, you can see Fordingham states that. Excuse me, could you please just turn off your microphone? Please turn off your microphone if it is not needed. Okay. Now, Fordingham states that Ralph Waldo Emerson was the founder of the Transcendental movement and his sole driving force. So who started it? Ralph Waldo Emerson. And his self-reliance, that text that we read in our last lecture, so that was actually, you can say, the foundation for this Transcendentalist movement. So he alone was competent to form a school, and as soon as he rose, the scholars trooped about him. By sheer force of genius, Emerson anticipated the results of the transcendental philosophy, defined its axioms, and ran out their inferences to the end. So you see, when he started this idea of transcendental idea, scholars started gathering around him, and he was very genius. So he knew that what could be the possible results of this transcendental philosophy. So that's why actually he defined, I mean, all the perspectives that was clear to him about transcendentalism to the people. And he also defines his axioms. That means he defines his principles. He defines his tenets to the people. And also he tried to explain their questions, their inferences. So you see, he tried his best to establish this idea of transcendentalism, and people accepted this transcendentalism in New England. I think since we don't have enough time, I can skip some of this description, because so far you have understood that what is transcendentalism. Now here I can see the transcendental cloud. Can you see that?
Yes, sir.
This one is important. You see, in 1836, publication of the Emerson's books Nature that I already mentioned of some of the paragraphs from the Nature, and you're familiar with this text by this time. So broke such new ground that those who read it recognize the signs of a new era, even if they couldn't describe them. And many who didn't read it felt in the atmosphere the change it introduced. So you see, those who read it recognize the signs of a new era. That means those who read the Nature, this text, they could, I mean, after reading the text, they could understand that something new is going to happen. A new philosophy is in the offing. That means it's nascent. It's going to happen. A new era is they're going to experience in future. They could understand it while actually they were reading the Nature, because it was so solid, it was so convincing that people believed in it actually when they started reading it. Even who didn't read it, it felt in the atmosphere the change is introduced. Even who didn't read it, they could feel that in the educated circle, those who read the Nature, they were talking about it, they were discussing about it, they were feeling it. So those who didn't read it, even they could feel feel the influence of these texts, this idea of this nature or transcendental plan. Now, I will jump to the next slide. Now, on July 15, 1838, Emerson gave a speech to the graduating class of Harvard Divinity School, now known as Divinity School Address, that was considered so radical at the time that it sparked a major controversy among Unitarian theologians, including Andrews Norton of Harvard, who responded with a lecture that called Transcendentalism the latest form of infidelity. So look at this. We know that our Ralph Waldo Emerson, actually, he was a public speaker, and on several occasions he was invited by the Harvard University, and there is a specific school or department that, for easy understanding, we can say. So by this school, the name of this school is Harvard Divinity School. At present, we call it Divinity School, and his address is called Divinity School Address. So they invited him to give a lecture. So he delivered the lecture, and after the lecture, you see the Unitarian theologians, I mean, people actually who still at that time believed in the Unitarian theology, they found it quite objectionable, and they couldn't believe it, because idea of the transcendentalism, it actually, in a sense, it incited or it's inspired individualism. And it inspired individualism in such a way that you don't have to take any help from any religion. You can help yourself. You can have your own communion. You can have your own connection with the God without taking any help from any biblical scriptures or any prophet or anything. So you don't need any prophet. You don't need any scriptures. You don't need any church. You don't need any religion. And you see, that was, and those who are Unitarian theologians, especially the professors in that university, Harvard University at that time, in that department, they were outraged by this speech. And you see, one of the very influential professors of that time in the Harvard Divinity School, his name was Andrews Norton. He said that latest form of infidelity. He says that this speech, this idea, this philosophy which has been promulgated or propagated by the Ralph Waldo Emerson, it was a form of infidelity. Infidelity means, who can say, what does it mean, infidelity? Can anyone tell me what does it mean? What does it mean, the word infidelity?
ধর্মে বিশ্বাস না করা।
Exactly. Yes, go on. Yes. No, someone is saying something interesting.
অনর্বরতা।
ধর্মে বিশ্বাস না করা।
Okay, ধর্মে বিশ্বাস না করা. I understand it. Then anything else?
Cheating.
Yes,
Type কোনো কিছু।
It's a kind of cheating. I know you took it from the regular meaning. Infidelity means, that means when you don't believe in the Almighty, when you don't believe in the regular sense of the God. When we believe in Allah or God, if you don't believe in that,
স্যার
it's
অ্যাথিস্ট টাইপের কিছু
not exactly not exactly atheist.
স্যার অ্যাথিস্ট
No, not exactly atheist. If you're an atheist, then you don't believe in God. But you see, transcendentalists, they believe in God, but not in the God of the Christian people. This is not the Christian God. This is just God, the only God. So that's why they are calling it infidelity. That means they're believing in God, but they don't believe in the Christianity. So that's why it's infidelity. It's a kind of cheating. It's a kind of treason. Vishwasghatokkata. Okay?
Okay, sir.
All
Okay,
right.
sir.
Let's see. Now here we will find that when this transcendentalism, when did it end? Now, on slide 17, you can see in 1840, the Transcendental Club came to an end, but the movement continued. By the 1850s, though, Transcendentalism had started to fade out. That means it was losing its influence. This Transcendentalism philosophy, it was losing its influence in 1850s. By the time the Civil War was over, many of the original members of the movement were dead, particularly Henry David Thoreau, Margaret Fuller, and Theodore Parker, while others had moved on to new causes like Native American rights. So what happened that when the Civil War actually broke out in America, in the 1850s and 1860s and later on, what happened that many of the precursors, or you can say the proponents, people actually who preached this transcendentalism, actually many of them died, like Henry David Thoreau, Margaret Fuller, and Theodore Parker. They died, and those actually who were alive, they were actually at that time they didn't practice transcendentalism, this philosophy, in that way, but rather actually they were moved for other causes. So they were fighting for Native Americans' rights and different other things. So they were busy with something else. So that's why in the 1850s, the influence of transcendentalism, it has started to fade out or decline, you can say. Yet a second wave of transcendentalists, such as Octavius Brooks Fordingham, Samuel Longfellow, then Moncure Conway, and Franklin Benjamin Sanborn, later brought new life to the movement. So there was a second wave of transcendentalism, and these people, they tried to revive this transcendental philosophy in American life. And transcendentalism began to face even more criticism, though, after the rise of the scientific method, which placed more value on material facts than spiritual ideas. So with the advancement of the scientific, you can say the science, people started, believing less in this kind of philosophical belief of transcendentalism. They become more scientific and more materialistic, because when you are materialistic, then certainly actually you cannot be transcendental. Because transcendental movement, the first thing is that you have to exceed this material existence, and then you have to reach that spirituality. But when you become more materialistic, then there is less possibility that you can achieve or attain or have this kind of transcendental experience in your mind. Now here in 1876, in an article titled Transcendentalism in New England, in the International Review, Samuel Osgood reacted to claims that transcendentalism has lost its relevance when he explained, undoubtedly the spread of the ideal philosophy has been one cause of its apparent decline, and the sect of transcendentalists have disappeared because their light has gone everywhere. Because their light has gone everywhere, meaning that the ideals of the movement has been fully adopted and absorbed into American culture. So this was an interesting explanation that why, or you can say this influence of transcendentalism, it could not be felt in the people of the American life. Why? Because it is not a matter, this transcendentalism, it's not only a matter of New England anymore. All the people in the the American people in every part of the America, now more or less actually they embrace this idea of transcendentalism and embrace this idea of individualism. So that's why it has become something which is very common. So you cannot find that kind of visible thing, visible influence of this. Let me explain it this way. For example, you can see this fact of the coronavirus that we are experiencing right at this moment. For some people, it has become something very common. So we really don't care about it anymore. Even some of us even have stopped watching television or even counting the number of the deaths. So on the television, they are showing the number of the deaths, and right now we don't care about it. It has become something which is very common phenomenon. It has become our daily life, a part of the daily life. So we have taken it for granted. Yes, we are in the coronavirus or COVID-19 situation. The pandemic is going on, so people are dying in all over the world. So it has become something which is very common. So we don't feel it in that way anymore. Do you follow me what I'm saying? Do you get the idea from here?
Yes, sir.
So when something becomes very common and everybody is, I mean, to some extent, in one way or another way, they are very individualistic. They have the individualist perspective, and they have same kind of idea about the God, that they don't need the Christianity. And so whether you say that they are transcendentalist or not, it doesn't matter. People are like this. So all over the America, they're saying that most of the people now they're transcendental. So that's why actually you cannot feel the influence of transcendentalism everywhere in that way. I mean, in the visible way. Now, the basic beliefs of transcendentalism, with this actually I will just conclude our today's lecture. So here we see the idealism is one of the basic principles. So transcendentalists share a fundamental belief in a higher reality of ideas, in a metaphysical realm of spirit that is obscured by the material world, according to Waldo Emerson in his book Nature, he mentioned it. That means that we have to believe a kind of ideal world where our physical existence or material existence actually it will not obstruct and it will not create any kind of obscured phenomenon for our spirit. So that's actually he's saying in his text, Nature, the mind is a part of the nature of things. The world is a divine dream from which we may presently awake to the glories and certainties of day. Idealism is a hypothesis to account of nature by other principles than those of carpentry and chemistry. So it's not like carpentry or chemistry. It is something which is metaphysical. This idealism is a kind of hypothesis, and it's a kind of metaphysical thing. And in transcendentalist, the transcendentalism, this idealism is one of the principal ingredients. And also, I will jump to the next one. There is obviously individualism. So transcendentalists believe that the people are inherently good, but that society and the institutions have corrupted the purity of the individual. So you see that we can exist. We are self-existent. Everything really is self-existent. So we can exist, independently. So we are self-dependent. You see the self-reliant. We discuss some ideas for the self-reliant, and you see in the self-reliance, it says that we shouldn't go for the imitation because imitation is suicide. And we have to practice individualism in our own way. We cannot depend on others or any other philosophies or on other religions or the Christianity, the biblical God. So we have to, practice this kind of individualism in our life. So individualism was a core part, or you can say one of the main principles of transcendentalism. So it's something that's self-dependent and self-existent. And he says that society and its institutions, that means we are good, basically we are good, but the society and institutions, they corrupt us. They corrupt our purity, they corrupt our individualism. And also transcendental knowledge. Here you see the transcendentalists emphasize subjective intuition over objective empiricism. They believe knowledge comes from within, either from human spirit or from God, who supplies the human spirit. And Emerson he talked about it. So you see, transcendentalists emphasize subjective intuition. It's only subjective. It's nothing objective. It's not objective empiricism. That means you cannot go for scientific experimentation for this kind of intuition. Intuition is something which is in you. You can feel it, but you cannot have any experiments on it. So it is not empirical. It is not practical. It's something which is impractical. You cannot see it, but you can feel it. And transcendentalists, they believe that knowledge comes from within because it is intuitive. So obviously your knowledge will come from within, or it may come from the spirit or from the God, but with the help of our spirit, our intuition, we can feel that we can feel that knowledge. And even if it is from the God, it must come through our spirit or through our intuition, not through Bible or not through from any prophets. So these are the famous transcendentalist authors. I have mentioned some of the names here, like very famous one like Walt Whitman. You are going to read his poems in your coming semesters. Walt Whitman, and obviously Henry David Thoreau, and also like Thomas Treadwell Stone, John Severy, Margaret Fuller, Waldo Emerson. So he started this transcendentalism, and also Charles Timothy Brooks, very famous. These are the very famous. I mean, you can see the transcendentalist authors, and also Christopher Pierce Crans, John Sullivan Dwight, William Henry Farnes, Frederick Henry Hedge, then Sylvester Jude, Theodore Parker, Elizabeth Palmer, Peabody, so and George Ripley. So these are the authors, very famous authors from this transcendentalist transcendentalist movement, transcendental movement, and these are the sources from where actually all this information have been collected. So if you're interested, you can go to these links by yourself, and you can also learn more about this transcendental movement or transcendentalism. So now the floor is open. If you have any question, you can ask me. And also, if you have any opinion or any suggestion, you can leave it here now.
আইডিয়ালিজম এবং ইন্ডিভিজুয়ালিজম এই দুটো তো আলাদা আলাদা, তাহলে একই সিরিজে কিভাবে পড়তেছে? আইডিয়ালিজম তো কাউকে আইডিয়াল ভাবা বা কোনো ওয়ার্ল্ডকে আইডিয়াল ভাবা, আর ইন্ডিভিজুয়ালিজম তো আমি নিজেই সব মানে
No. Here, idealism doesn't mean that I'm taking someone as my ideal. It's not like this. Idealism is something which is spiritual. Ideal means you cannot see it. Understood? It is something metaphysical. You see, it says transcendentalists share a fundamental belief in the higher reality of ideas. Higher reality of ideas. It's a reality of ideas. And the reality of ideas, it's very high. It's in the other world. It's not here in this world. So you cannot go by any kind of ideas of this world. Then how it can be related to the idea that you can follow. Got it? And this idea actually, it comes from your mind. You see, in his text, he says that the mind is a part of the nature of things. The mind is the part, and it's a part of the nature. And from there, actually, you will get the idea. And this mind, this idea, they are divine. You see, the world is a divine dream. This world actually, I mean, the world they are thinking, that is not the real world. That's the world in the dream. It's there in imagination. And for that, actually, you have to transcend from this physical world, your physical existence, to a world which is completely non-physical, which is metaphysical, beyond your physical existence. That is completely spiritual, based on your intuition. Okay? Is that clear now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, clear.
Okay. Anything else? Anything else?
No, sir.
Okay, so if you don't have anything to say or any comment or any questions, then I'd like to conclude today's lectures here. Still, if you have any question, you can leave your questions in the Facebook group, and I will come back to you soon as possible, and I will try to answer all your queries. All right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much,
Sir,
and thanks for your patience and your cooperation, and hope to see you in our next lecture, inshallah. And until then, take care of yourself and stay safe.
Assalamu alaikum.
Right.